Prepare, respond, survive. When seconds count, train with the best. Fire facilities, custom steel towers built for real-world fire training. Be ready, be resilient.
Hello there, my friends, and welcome to Fire Engineering and another podcast on the Fire Engineering Podcast Network. This episode, the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, the podcast that is dedicated to our great volunteer fire service and getting all of our listeners to embrace the message that developing and upholding and displaying a professional image and reputation, well, that's the duty and responsibility of all firefighters, paid or volunteer. And true professionalism is certainly never defined by a paycheck. Tom Merrill here. Thanks again for joining me. I truly appreciate it. And we are going to jump right into this month's episode of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. If you happen to be listening to the last episode, you know that our guest here today had some technical difficulties. He was supposed to be with us with Chief Rick Lasky and myself, and he had some Wi-Fi issues, and we lost him. We gave him the hook, actually, because he was coming in and out. So he agreed to come back on, and we seem to have a good connection today. So I'm honored and pleased to have Chief John Salka join me. I'm sure most of you know him. He's a proud volunteer firefighter, has been for many years, and also retired as a chief in the FDNY. So, Chief, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me.
My pleasure, Tom. Thanks for having me back again for a second try.
Yes, and it seems to be working today, so I think we're good. We're all connected. So, again, I know we don't have to go into your long history, your career. You've been there, you've done that. And what I truly, when I met you, one of the things I was immediately, what I immediately liked about you is your strong embrace of my message, the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, because, you know, there's a lot of trolls out there. There's a lot of people that like to dispute that, volunteers, they can't be professional. And here you are, arguably, one of the biggest fire departments in the world. And you immediately latched onto that message and gave me full support, right? You just totally, you understand and you embrace that message, right? Professionalism has nothing to do with the paychecks.
Right. And obviously part of the reason for that is that I've been a volunteer, and I started as a volunteer. And you and I both know you from being out on the lecture circuit now yourself. Myself and Rick Lasky, we travel around a lot together. We both do our individual stuff as well, but a lot of the company officer training that Rick and I do, you know, we'll ask people in the audience at a couple of different points during the class, who here started as a volunteer? And half the audience always raises their hand. You know, even though most of the audience is career, fully half of them raise their hand and say, I started in volunteers where I grew up or in a little town nearby or whatever it might be. And my story is the same. My story is the same. My first exposure to the fire service was Mineola, the Mineola Fire Department out on Long Island in New York State. And I was an eager 18-year-old boy, and boy, did I join right up. You know, I just couldn't wait. I remember hanging around there. I remember being there. I already had the interest, but I didn't have the age yet, you know. So I remember hanging around there, and they were very, if I remember correctly, my memory is not, I can't even remember necessarily. Somebody says, oh, what year did you make battalion chief? What year did you make captain? I have to really sit down and think about it and count it. Some guys have those things memorized, and my memory is not quite as sharp. I don't know why. I remember things that are important, and I'm not saying these things aren't important, but I don't remember how receptive the folks were at the Mineola Fire Department, but they were receptive enough that I kept hanging around, and I did, in fact, eventually join. And it turns out one of my neighbors, Billy Bowen, nice man, very quiet. He was a Nassau County police officer, lived, you know, a big long block away from me, but he was an adult. You know, he had a wife and two young girls and owned a house, and he became my sponsor. Mineola you had to have a sponsor to join the volunteer fire company, and of course that helped me get in as well. I find it very interesting, and I'm sure you have some better stories than I do. I find it very interesting the numerous different ways, the numerous different procedures, and I can't think of a better word than the different ways that volunteer fire departments admit new members. It's it's almost unending. There's so many different ways, you know?
Yeah, the black ball. Did you ever hear of the black ball? Where
That's what I had in Mineola. They had a wooden box with a hole in the top, and everybody had a black ball and a white ball, and they passed it around. You know, after they introduced you, this is John Salka. He's a senior in Mineola High School. Billy Bowen is his sponsor. He's lived here all his life, blah, 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 blah. And he's been on the waiting list, and now we have an opening. We had waiting lists in Mineola. 3 companies, engine 1, truck 2, engine 3. Each one was allowed to have, by bylaw, 50 members, and each one always had 50 members. So when you went to join, they would tell you that, okay, we're going to give you an application, and you can come around on Monday nights and observe, and and you need to get a sponsor and stuff like that. But we're not taking new members right now because we're full. But it could change at any day. Somebody could move or retire or quit or whatever. So, but anyway, they would pass that black box, that wooden box. I remember it was a wooden box. And each member had a black ball and a white ball, and they dropped one or the other in that box. And when the box went back up to the president, up at the front table, if there was one black ball in there, they sent you home. You didn't get in. Right. Not 2, not 3, just 1. Yeah. Very, very interesting. Right? I sort of feel bad because probably some great guys got pushed away because maybe the way they looked, or maybe somebody didn't like their dad or something like that, but that was the process back then. And I snuck in, so.
Sometimes there's always that guy or that girl that just likes to be the no vote. We do a vote in our department, and I'll tell you that story in a second, but there's always 1 or 2 no votes. They can be the greatest person in the world that you're bringing in, but there's always that person in the audience that likes to say no for whatever reason it is.
We get those guys. We get those guys in South Blooming Grove, where I'm a volunteer member now, just for routine business during a monthly meeting. All in favor? Aye. All opposed. The same 2 nitwits in the back row raise their hand.
Right.
And sometimes it's an ex-chief or an ex-president or something like that. It always sort of annoyed me. I'm a bit of a straight shooter when it comes to that. I like things to be done sort of the way they're supposed to be done, and I know you sort of just like that as well. And it always bothered me that some guys wanted to just sort of disrupt the process a little bit, or bring attention to themselves by voting no.
They go against the grain, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
But you brought up a good subject there in our volunteer fire service, right? How we bring members in, and that could be an episode all on its own. There's a couple of things I've noticed. Number one, as I talk to departments around the country, we talk about the importance of a good background check. But what the problem is, no one has waiting lists anymore. So we're so desperate to get warm bodies into the firehouse. In some cases, departments aren't even doing background checks. And to uphold the honor of our profession, you got to do background checks. I mean, in New York, as you know, it's mandated. We have to do the arson background check and the sexual predator background check. But I've been in states, and I know you have too, right? They don't have any background check requirements, and they don't really see. They're just so happy to get somebody coming through the door. They don't even know what their background is, and that could let some of the wrong people in. So there's a lesson right there.
And now those people are now exposed to the membership and the firehouse and whatever valuables are there. And most importantly, and most tragically, now they're exposed to the community. Now these guys are wandering around inside people's homes, on an emergency or on a call for a smoke or a gas leak or something like that. And you know what? What if the guy was a repeat offender, burglar? Now he's walking through people's homes, with his gear on, with the lieutenant who's walking in front of him, and who knows if he's, picking something up. I hate to even utter those words because it would make people think, oh my goodness, but you're right. And background checks would probably, to a great degree, relieve that.
Right. And what I recommend is, again, New York is a whole different animal, is we're required to do the arson background check, which that's a good idea. You don't want an arsonist joining your volunteer fire department.
I would think not, no.
And then they require the sexual predator background check, although that is not an automatic disqualification, which I find interesting. Arson is, but sexual predator, well, we can still let you in. I don't think any department would, but it's not an automatic disqualification for what I've been told.
It's a new world out there, and Rick and I talk about this all the time, and I talk about it, frankly, all the time, really, regardless of who I'm with. it's a new world. New York, New York State happens to be a pretty liberal state. Although, let me say, I love New York, and I do still love New York. There's a lot of things about it I don't like, but I'm not one of those New York haters. And a lot of firemen are and cops are. They're like, oh, as soon as I retire, I'm getting the hell out of here, and I'm going to South Carolina. And a lot of them do. And matter of fact, we had a Battalion 5 meeting last night at South Plymouth Grove. We hosted the battalion. We have a battalion meeting every other month. And there's like 6 departments or 7 departments in our battalion. And we happened to have it hosted last night. And Scott Morris was there. Scott left just about a year ago, and he moved to South Carolina. He was the chief ahead of me. So when he was Car 1, I was Car 2. Good guy. His 2 boys are on the department. One's a captain right now. One's Car 3. Just a good family. And he left, but he just happened to be in town for whatever. Something was going on with the family, so he was in town. So he came to the meeting. But it's true. It's background checks are important, and I don't know why folks wouldn't do it. You can't be that desperate for people that you want to hire a criminal unknowingly hire a criminal.
Right. Yeah. So good practice is good background checks, and then the other thing is we discovered this in my department. We had to change our bylaws, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, just before COVID, I think, because we were doing something that we didn't know was illegal in New York anyway, maybe everywhere, but we would vote members in and then a year later vote on them again. They would, in other words, the application would come in, we'd do the background check, do all the reviews, a recommendation was made, yes or no, and the department membership at a meeting would vote for them. Yes, we accept them, or no, we don't. That put them in their probationary phase. A year later, we voted on them a second time. And we
keep them to take them off probation, right?
Right. And we found out that is illegal, that you can't do that because you're voting on them twice. Once you accept them, once you vote them in, they're due process. So if you're
right. So you'd have to actually have charges or a violation or some reason, right?
Yes.
We don't do that. We just they interview the guy, they talk to him, they give an application, they do those background checks, and then they announce we have a new member who's put his application in, his probation starts, here he is, and then they got to get him collected, covered by the insurance and stuff like that.
Right.
And then when it's over, when his year is over, then they say, oh, we have a vote tonight.
Yes.
Terrence has been here for a year now, and we send him out of the room, and then we vote on him. I don't think we've ever rejected anyone.
Right. And that's what we
last the whole year,
And that's how we do it now. We were corrected. And like I said, 6-7 years ago, just before COVID, but we didn't know, it's always been this way. This is how we've always done it until we redid our bylaws and had our attorney involved. And he's like, you really can't do it. What? Okay. So learning point there. So,
right.
Let me ask you, Chief, I talked to Chief Lasky about this last month. I'm so tired of sometimes just all the negative news associated with the volunteer fire service. Yes, we're facing challenging times. We're all hurting for members. But then I go to the firehouse and I'm reminded that, the members we do have, they're really special people and they're doing really good work. And I know there's some that are saying, the volunteer fire service is going to be gone in another 5 years. Well, still is 65% of the country is protected by volunteer, and 90% of populations with 25,000 or less are all volunteer. It's not going away overnight. And I think we need to recognize that while there are challenging times, it's still a pretty special profession filled with some pretty special people.
I'm glad you brought that up. And let me say, at the top, I agree. I agree with your assessment. I agree with your opinion. I have a similar opinion that volunteer firefighters are special people, men and the women that do it around the country under different conditions. Some of them under trying, difficult conditions. Some volunteer fire departments are doing 1,600 runs a year. Fires and emergencies and automatic alarms, and like the pager goes off like beep 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 4 times a day, every day. Which is difficult. However, what you must remember, because you are even so much more in love with the volunteer fire service, you have a heightened appreciation and love for the volunteer fire service. And what you must remember is some of the negatives, some of the shortcomings of the volunteer fire service are real. They're real, like light staffing, light light numbers of people. In my volunteer fire department, I'm the perfect example. There are many nights at 2 o'clock in the morning for an automatic alarm, not for smoke in a building or report of a house fire, but runs that sort of sound like routine nothing runs. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 people might show up. It might be me and the driver, and we end up driving out of the firehouse with nobody else on the apparatus floor. Nobody else on the apparatus, excuse me. And frankly, Charlotte, that's just not right. That's just not right. And that's not the level of service. We can't say that volunteer firefighters are as good as paid firefighters. Volunteer firefighters are professionals, just like career firefighters. We just don't get a paycheck and then roll out with 2 people on a rig for anything. It's just, so my point is not that I'm validating the negatives or the complaints, but most of the things that people bring. Now, some people are just big union guys, and some guys have bad experiences in a volunteer, so they just hold on to that, and they bash the volunteers whenever they can. Not those people, but there are some legitimate people that have either complaints or suggestions for the volunteer fire service. And what we should be doing, and I agree with you, sort of worrying about our image. Yeah, we should try and minimize them, at least minimize the vocalizing of these things, right? Like if somebody was to write a letter into your local newspaper about the volunteer fire department, it took them 9 minutes to get to my house. That's a legitimate complaint. Do you think that's a legitimate complaint? Absolutely. So that's something we have to work on. We have to work on, obviously, recruitment and retention. That's your middle name. You know all about that. Recruitment and retention is very, very important. New York State and everywhere else. But the other things too, about turning out quickly, and about, like, I have a complaint, and I say it all the time. And even though I'm retired FDNY and I'm an author and I've written books and I travel around the country teaching, at my volunteer firehouse, I am just Joe shit the rag man there. I'm just another member. You know what I'm saying? If I say something, now maybe there's somebody that takes what I say a little bit more importantly than what some 19 or 20-year-old kid says. But and I say it all the time to guys, like, so we'll get a run at 4 p.m. for maybe an automatic alarm, or maybe it's like an odor of gas or something, and I hustle. I live pretty far away from the firehouse, a couple of miles. I hustle to get to the firehouse because I always tell myself, if I'm going to be a member, if I'm going to stop what I'm doing and go on this run, I want to get on the rig. I want to be part of it. I don't want to just drive to the firehouse, stop at every red light, wait till it turns green, drive to the firehouse, go inside, the rig's gone, start the run sheet for me and the other guys that are there, and then go home and get a mark for it. That's not why I want to be, obviously that's the process. Sometimes if people get there late, they have to do that. But I hustle and try and get there to make the rig if I can. I'm an officer anyway, but even if I wasn't. And then we're getting on the rig. Rig pulls out. We board our rig on the apron, not inside. Our rig pulls out empty and stops on the apron, and that's where we get our people on. We're just climbing on. I'm the officer in the front seat, 2 guys in the back. You guys ready? Ready? Tommy, you ready? All of a sudden, car 1 to 585. Go ahead. You can remain in quarters. 10-4. 10-4 is all you can say. We back in. When we get back, I'm like, what was that about? It was, the same problem we had last week, or the same problem we had yesterday, or I tracked it down real quick myself. And it's a poor example. The one I just gave you is a poor example. But some of the chiefs, and all good guys, and I'm not bad-mouthing chiefs because we have a good lineup. Some of the chiefs turn us around, I think, too quickly, and I keep telling them, there's one element that you're forgetting, that we're all volunteers. I said, if I never go on another run, it'll be fine with me. I went on 50,000 runs in New York City. I've been a volunteer for coming up on 50 years now. I've been to plenty of runs and plenty of fires, and if I never went to another one, it'd be just fine. But there's a lot of young men here that are in their first or second or third year as volunteer firefighters. They're waiting to go to their second big call. They're waiting, and they hustle to get down here too, and they want to get on that rig. They want to wear that leather helmet. They want to hear that siren going, and you're deflating it. You're saying remain in quarters. We're not even running down the road. I said, let the rigs get there. Even if you call them up and say, I'm on a scene, it appears to be a non-emergency, respond here, but respond non-emergency mode. And at least let the guy get a ride. Let him get off the rig and grab the tools and put his SCBA on. Because if you cancel us on 10 runs, that's 10 opportunities for young guys to put the SCBA on and pull it out of the bracket and do the straps properly and climb off the rig and remember where the tools are. And if you shortcut that by turning us around or saying remain in quarters, so I'm just using that as an example. When I see something I don't like, I try and, I don't bring it up at a company meeting. I'll talk to the chief on, I'll meet him back out of this car when he pulls in. I said, "You turn this around again, man. I'm going to stop coming. And they're like, "Oh, sorry, chief. I know, but it was a lot of traffic out." And sometimes they make good calls. Sometimes it'll be a 45-minute run if we go, because there's some nonsense going on. But anyway, the long and the short of this is a long answer to your question is, yeah, there are some issues with the volunteer fire service. There are some issues, and I don't like seeing them publicly talked about because we want the public to have the highest confidence in us all the time.
Right.
But internally, when we see stuff happening, maybe that needs to be corrected or done a little bit differently or done better, we, you and me, and any other member for that matter should, make it a point to bring it up either to other members or to an officer or however that process is done.
Back to that response thing, though, there's a dichotomy there. I think you'd agree with me. You have to balance the information you're getting, or perhaps the chief's on scene and sees it was burnt toast with the response. Do we still let them come lights and sirens and, not jeopardize the safety? But every time you're responding lights and sirens, you're enhancing a chance for an accident and things like that. So there's a whole dichotomy.
But once you cut the lights and sirens and you say respond non-emergency to the scene, at least we're getting a big red truck that pulls up to the scene with Sapling Grove Fire Department on it, with all the lights flashing. People get used to seeing them. If you don't get your rigs out on the street on runs, people start to forget that you have a fire department. Like, oh, gee, I haven't seen a fire truck in so long. Do we still have one? It's just, So that I just like to get out there for visibility, for a little routine for the drivers to make another run, and I don't know. Volunteers make an effort to get to the firehouse out of their own time. At least give them the opportunity to get on a rig and go through the motions.
I understand. Volunteers' most precious commodity is time, and if they feel that it's being wasted, they're just going to stay home when those pagers goes off. And what do you think the problem is with the engagement? That's a problem I hear a lot about when I'm traveling, and I see it even locally. And I got to admit, sometimes I'm even guilty of it. Are there too many routine or nuisance alarms that they're not leaving home for? Like, obviously getting people out of bed at 2 a.m. is always a real challenge. People work and things like that, always has been. I don't know if there's a magic bullet or any magic potion to solve that other than, I guess you lead by example, the officers and chiefs, but encouraging people to get involved and to go to more than just the house fire or significant incident.
Right.
That's a challenge.
Rick talks about that all the time. He says, I didn't know volunteer firemen had different levels, and you picked what alarms you wanted to go on to. He said, I was a volunteer fireman too. So when the pager goes off, you respond. He said, what? And I remember when I was chief in South Blooming Grove a couple of times, but the first time it wasn't a problem, but the second time it was. Our membership was dwindling due to some stuff going on in the community, and we'd have a meeting night. We'd have 38 or 40 guys at a company monthly meeting, and the president would, go through the motions of doing everything. I was like, okay, chief's report. And I would stand up, okay, guys, good job the other day on that extrication. And I thanked Monroe. They came in and assessed us with their rescue truck and this and this and that. Oh, and I counted the membership tonight. We have 40 guys here tonight for membership, which I think is wonderful. We don't have a very big membership here to start. We only have about 42 or 43 people. So we're almost at 100% for tonight's meeting, which is a great thing to see. But 5 hours from now, we're going to get a run. Now, this is at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night. I said 5 hours from now, we're going to get a run. It's going to be 2 o'clock in the morning. You know how many people are going to show up? I know, because I'm one of them. Three people are going to show up. And I want to know why. I want to know why if 40 of you can make it to the company meeting tonight at 8 o'clock till 9:30, and the free meal that we give you after the company meeting. If 40 of you can make it to that, why can't 40 of you make it to a midnight run or a 1 o'clock run? Now, I know if the run comes in at 4 a.m. or 4:30, and you got to get up at 4 a.m. or 4:30 to catch a bus to New York or to leave and drive to New York City for an hour, those are conflicts that obviously you have to pick your job over coming here. No problem at all. I've driven past this firehouse on the way to work where guys were getting on a rig, and I knew I had no time to stop. I had to keep going. But that's not it. 40 guys here. 40 of you don't all leave for work at 4 in the morning. And if it's 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, guess what? Well, you're gonna be a little tired at work then tomorrow. Why are you on, Salka? I'm a volunteer. We had a run last night at 1 o'clock. I was out for an hour, so I lost an hour's sleep last night, which is a long way of saying, you know what? If you're going to be a volunteer firefighter or any firefighter, but we're talking about volunteers now, you got to make the calls. You can't pick them. You can't pick and choose. We can't run a fire department when 3 people show up for a run at 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't care what it is, Yeah.
That's
and I must tell you, I did it myself. About 5 years ago, I was starting to pick and choose my runs. Be 2 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and be like, oh, God. And all of a sudden, it would be an automatic alarm at the Dunkin' Donuts, which I knew was closed. I'm like, silence, go back to sleep. We got all these young guys, so I'll let all these young guys do it, And I started realizing, you know what? I'm missing a lot of runs, number one. Number two, a lot of runs, there's only 1 or 2 guys showing up. So I made a commitment to myself, not to the company, didn't tell anybody, and I make every run no matter what it is. No matter what it is, when that pager goes off, I'm standing up, I'm pulling my trousers on, and I'm heading out the door. Doesn't matter what time it is, what the weather is. If I'm home, I go.
I got to give you credit for that, because especially with the amount of years you have in and being a past chief twice, it can be tough to keep that motivation. So whatever you inoculated yourself with, I want some of that, because that's a compliment to you.
If you don't, then you stop going, and before you know it, you're going to 3 runs a month instead of 16 runs a month. And guys are talking about stuff on those runs at the next run that you do go to, and you're like, oh, where were you? Now what do you say? Where were you? You weren't out cutting grass. You weren't in Middletown shopping. It was 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So it's just easy to do, frankly, what you're supposed to do, which is take in every run if you're home and available. Sometimes I'm home with Colleen, my daughter, and Dawn is out shopping, a long way from here. And the pager goes off, and I miss it because I can't leave Colleen by herself. And I have a clear conscience about that. But if I'm available, I go.
Good for you. You mentioned earlier you had a bunch of young guys, and I wanted to talk about the youth because obviously it is we need young people. It's a young person's job. I don't know how many more years I'm going to be an interior guy. I'm 62, hoping to make it to 65 interior, but we'll see.
I'm 67, and I had the nozzle about 3 months ago.
Tell that story. That's a great volunteer story. I think I heard it on one of your podcasts that you talked. Was you and one other guy?
It's a good story. It was the middle of the afternoon one day, and it came in for either a house fire or smoke in the house or smoke from the house. Doesn't really matter. And I zoomed to the firehouse. I got there pretty quick. There was nobody there. There was nobody at the firehouse. Usually the door's open. Usually there's a couple of cars already, and I'm like the 3rd guy or the 4th guy sometimes. Nobody there. I pull in, let myself in, put the door up. Another guy pulls up. A driver. And I'm not a driver. He's a driver. He said, anybody else here, Chief? I said, nope, just me and you. All right. And all of a sudden, call 1, we hear him on the radio reporting smoke showing. Resound for all available manpower. Siren goes off again, right? I'm not waiting. I've been to a lot of fires. I'm not waiting for that siren to wind down, for more people to hear that and then respond. I said, let's go. And he jumped in and I jumped in, and off we went. I'm in the officer seat. He's in the driver's seat, and we drive up there, and it's a job. It's a kitchen fire. Yeah. We pull up. I jump out of the rig. He comes around. We pull the crosslay off up on my shoulder. Here I am, fully dressed, 67 years old, with a crosslay on my shoulder, walking up this driveway. It's a hill up the driveway. And there's a lot of people there. The house was occupied, meaning they were home, Pulled it out, called for water. He charged it. I kicked it out a little bit. And in the back door I went. The kitchen was right there. Knocked the fire down. Cabinets were burning and everything else. Put the line down, and I went and did a search. Primary search of the 5th floor, complete and negative. I gave that report as well. Obviously, I don't know if he gave a second alarm or not, but he called for mutual aid. By the time the fire was out, we had like 5 fire engines there and probably 30 people. And everybody was doing all sorts of shit. And the fire was out, and the searches were clear. all in the first 2 minutes after I got there, But I must tell you, on the way up that driveway, I was saying to myself, man, I'm by myself now. I'm no 30-year-old kid anymore, It was,
Right.
it was, it was what it was, But
Yeah.
you don't have a choice.
And I bet you stories like that are shared quite often in the volunteer fire service, right? It's an older population, especially during the day. Your driver could be 75 years old and a couple guys on the truck, and gals are in their 60s. And it is what it is. That's probably very common throughout the United States.
Yep, sure is.
Yeah. So you mentioned you have some young people in your firehouse. I wanted to talk about the youth in today's fire service. As I started to say, we need them. I'm slightly encouraged. I don't know if you've had this observation, but this year I think I'm right with my observation. It looks to me like I'm seeing more youth at some of the conferences that I've attended. Still not overwhelming. It's still primarily the gray hair or no hair people, but I've seen, I think, an influx of younger people. And this is twofold. We need young people in our firehouses, but we also need to encourage them to go out and get the training and do the networking at these various events, which I think is great. I have an article coming out in Fire Engineering that it's titled, "We're Gonna Be All Right," because I had an opportunity to meet some young people, both in my own firehouse, where we've had a good influx of some young people, and then at the Missouri Winter Fire School back in February. A great group of young people came to meet me and had me sign my book for them. And we sat down and talked, and I was really encouraged with their level of dedication, their commitment, their passion, their love of the history. That blew me away, where we came from. I'm like, hey, this is amazing. And I'm back in my own firehouse watching our young people train and work hard and genuinely love hanging out at the firehouse. I'm like, this is good. Yeah, we need more of it, but we're doing okay. Some of these kids are really good kids. They're smart kids. And,
and different communities have different populations, I guess you could say. Some are just little small rural towns, and then there's the 40, 50,000 person towns and cities, and then there's the urban, obviously the urban places probably have career departments, but and we had not a gigantic, but we had a pretty big influx of young people in my volunteer fire department, and most of them are still around, and they've been the survival of our department. Most of them are all the active guys. Almost every officer, except me, is one of these new young guys. All of them, from the captain to the lieutenants, all the way down. The civil officers generally are a little bit older guys that have been around for a little bit longer. But it has been wonderful. And you did mention one thing. There's one shortfall there is the classes, getting them to take the classes. They do take the classes. They all like the live fire. All you got to do is put up, Washingtonville's having a live fire. Anybody interested, sign up. Boom, everybody signs up. Everybody wants to go to a live fire training, at the training center. But I keep telling guys, you got to get, and this year, actually, the commissioners just attended. Well, they didn't attend, but the chiefs attended a commissioners meeting last month and then came to our officers meeting, which follows our company meeting. And they said, we were just with the commissioners, and it's going to be enforced this year. Whether you're an officer or not, a couple of years we had to let guys actually take the officer job, even though they didn't have the 2 or 3 classes that were required by the bylaws. And it's a violation. There's no way to get around that, but whatever. And then they had to go get it in the next year. They had to get it by the time the election came up again next year. And if they didn't, then we had a clear conscience. Look, we let you in. You had to do it. So now they're telling me you got to have, whatever the short collection of classes was. And the guys got now. I know in New York State now, aren't they actually paying you? Don't you get money now when you take classes?
Yeah, there's a stipend that you can collect for several of the different classes that are offered, including Firefighter 1 and Fire Officer 1, I believe. Yeah, there's a stipend that you can collect.
Which is nice. So there's a little attraction. I actually just started something. I just started something in my company. I started a little stipend for making runs. In the company, not the district. The district can't do it. The department can't do it, but the company can do it.
Right.
So I did a motion, and we haven't put it together yet, but we set like a reward for the top responder, like I think it was going to be quarterly. The top responder for every quarter, whoever made the most runs was going to get not cash, but maybe a coupon or a what do they call that? To go to the store with, But anyway, and it went through and it voted through. So, and we're actually doing some fundraising in the company. We're doing a 50-50 and stuff to accumulate a little fund separate from everything else. And I said, well, if the stipend works for training, maybe it'll work for runs. Maybe a guy will say, hey, you know what? Yeah, and you can't win it 2 or 3 in a row. So if you win it the first quarter, you can't win it the rest of the year. Nobody's going to stop making runs because they can't win the thing. But somebody else then will get a chance the next quarter, because there's a couple of guys, and I'm one of them, that are always right at the top, always the top responders. So there's 1 or 2 guys that I know are going to get probably the first quarter and the second quarter, but then it'll eventually get down to the other guys,
Interesting. We did something similar in our department, separate from the district, where it targeted everyone who made their minimums, and they were able to purchase something out of the fire store catalog and up to a certain dollar amount, and the department would pay for it. So they could, nothing that the district provides you, but if you wanted a flashlight or something from the fire store, the department, as long as you made your minimums for the year, the department paid up to a certain dollar amount, which was nice. And we decided to do that.
More than one guy will get it. Right.
Right. And a lot of times then the programs that reward the top responders, sometimes it's the retirees or the people that work for the DPW that can leave work during the day. And, people that maybe are in New York City working all day, or in our case, in City.
Right. And they're saying, I'll never get that. I'll never get that.
Right.
I like your idea. Maybe we can even adjust ours a little bit to that, to say, maybe every quarter the top 5, or maybe if you make your minimum. The other thing somebody thought about was if you make the minimums and then you put, it wasn't even if you make the minimums. They were like, for every run you make, you get a coupon. And at the end of the 3 months, we put all the coupons into a thing, and we pull one out, and that's the guy that wins. So it could be a guy that didn't make the most runs, but he made enough that he had a bunch of coupons in there, and he gets picked. And there's no routine. There's nobody coming up, month after month after month. So that's another idea as well.
Yeah, there's some creative ideas out there. But so you're the old officer, huh?
I'm the oldest guy in the firehouse. But
what's your rank?
I'm a lieutenant.
Okay.
The reason that happened was I was newly ex-chief, and one of our lieutenants moved to another county. So we had an opening for truck lieutenant, and the chief said, you want to, it was the guy that was right behind me. When I was 1, he was 2. Now he was car 1. He said, you want to do me a favor and take the truck officer? I said, sure, I'm here all the time anyway. So I took it. And then nobody else expressed an interest. I think some of the young guys might have shied away from it. I'm not quite sure why. But so when the election came up, I took the nomination again, and I ran again. So I've done it for like 3 years now. So
you're elected every year.
Now our chief is leaving.
Oh,
Car 1 is leaving. He's going to retire and move to South Carolina. So car 2 is going to go to 1. Car 3 is going to go to 2. And car 4 doesn't have 2 years as captain yet, so he can't be car 3. So they're going to have to drop somebody in car 3. There's a guy ahead of me. Pete could take it. He's in 27 truck, or I could take it, or really any ex-chief could take it. But I would take it if they asked me, you want to be car 3 for a year until Will gets his second year, and then he'll take, I would do that. I'm home all the time. Why not?
Go through the ranks again? Do it a third time? Be chief of department? I don't know. Oh, gosh. What do you think of the young kids today?
I think they're great. At least ours are. I say it all the time. Number one, doing what you do and what I do, what Rick does, traveling around, teaching, lecturing. I don't think I've really met one real piece of shit. I just don't. I know they exist somewhere in the fire service. I don't know where they're hiding, but they're nowhere that I go, and my fire department's no exception. We have 20-year-old guys. I hang around with 20-year-old guys all the time at the firehouse. It's 5 20-year-old guys and me, and we got Billy, Big Daddy. He's a little bit older than me. He's like 70 something. he still drives. He's not in Terry anymore. He still drives. But most of them I'm hanging around with guys that are 40 and 50 years younger than me, which is great. And they're all great. All these young guys are great. They're busy. They jump up to empty the garbage. They set up the meeting for company meeting. And, once in a while, if they don't, I'll come out to the apparatus floor. Everybody having fun out here, smoking and drinking coffee? I'm setting the chairs up. Anybody want to help? And then 3 guys will come running in, and that'll be that. But I think the young guys are great, and they are the survival, right? They're the future of the volunteer fire service because older guys are just getting older,
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Do you find that you got to lead them differently than maybe you had to be led when you were their age?
Say again?
Do you find that you have to maybe treat them differently or lead them differently than maybe you had to be led when you were their age? Is there a difference?
You know what? Some people have come to that conclusion, and I have not. I'm still sort of the old school guy, and I do it the way I've always done it. I do it the way I did it when I was in 48 Engine as the captain. I did it the way, and sometimes I have doubts, and sometimes my wife tells me, who are you just talking to? And I don't want to say I've had great success, but nobody's ever filed a complaint on me. Nobody's ever said, you know what, Chief, up yours, and walked out of my office. I've had pretty good success. Anytime I left anywhere or transferred or retired, showing up the last night saying, it was great being with you. I got a big banner on the wall in my garage downstairs that they put up the night I retired from the 18th Battalion. And I worked my last night. Rick was there. He flew in for it. And, they had it made up some way. Congratulations, Chief Salka, on your retirement, Battalion 1-8, and pictures on it and everything else. Everybody signed it, which is great. Everybody signed it. That was at the party. Pretty cool. Sometimes I look at it and remember a lot of the guys. And you know what? I'm not saying I was the most loved guy in the firehouse, which I'm sure I was not, but my sort of old school ways is the way I've always done it. Even before when you said about making runs, I said, you know what? When the bell goes off, make the runs. I'm not creating a new program for that. Just you want to be a volunteer fireman, make the runs. I'm sort of old school when it comes to stuff like that. I might be just a tad, just a little bit. Maybe I'll speak just a little bit softer now than I used to, but all the young guys in my firehouse are all pretty, I don't want to call them tough guys or tough dudes or tough kids, but they're all pretty good. They all work for a living. They're all, driving machines and doing all sorts of manly things, So I haven't had that issue yet.
What would you say if I was to put you on the spot and ask for Chief John Salka's top leadership lessons that apply universally in the volunteer or career side? What did you live by? What were some of your top lessons that you could provide to other officers that are looking to inspire the team, motivate the team, get along with the team?
I don't know if you can even categorize it as a leadership lesson, but I know we talk about it in our leadership classes. Matter of fact, I was just on the phone with a guy just a couple hours ago. I'm going up to Dover, New Hampshire, to do a leadership class. And one of the things that I think is important that if you do all the time, and I try to do it all the time, and if you don't do it, it becomes noticeable and you might not be so successful, is you got to let your people know what's expected of them, particularly the newer, younger, particularly brand new people or brand new officers. You got to let them know. I think I was pretty much on top of that when I was a battalion chief. I would talk to new company officers. I didn't make a big special appointment to have them come in and talk to me, but when I saw them, I would say, "Oh, I'm glad I ran into you," and I would pull them off to the side and just say, "You know what? Just here's what I like seeing. Try not to let me see you doing this or this. Those are just silly things that some officers do that they're just trying to save time or whatever. But if you do this and if you do this, and when we're doing that, I want you to do it this way." Most guys are like, "Oh, that's pretty fair. That's, you know what, Chief, that's sort of like how I do it anyway." Great. We're going to get along good. So I think letting people know, whether it's young firefighters, new officers, letting people know what's expected of them. Most people in the fire service want to please the boss. They want to be accepted. So if you let them know what they have to do to be accepted, to be not to be liked, but to be accepted, how could that hurt? How could that hurt?
Right.
It doesn't have to be somebody you like or somebody you don't like. You see, it's hard to be really nice and fair with somebody who pisses you off. Somebody whose demeanor, whose whose vocabulary, maybe even the way they look, and those are not necessarily the right way to judge people, but but we do sometimes.
Right.
It's hard. It's hard to give those people a second chance or to be nice to them or be whatever. But if you just let everybody, no matter whether you like them or don't like them, whether you think they're going to make it or whether you don't think they're going to make it, if you let everybody know what's expected of them, and they do it, everything falls into place.
Yeah.
Suddenly you got a guy that you really maybe weren't so happy with, and now you're pretty tickled to have him.
And you hear that a lot in leadership books and leadership podcasts, in any classes on leadership. Establish expectations. It's always right at the top. Always.
Absolutely.
Along with clear communication. That's another one that's always in there. You gotta communicate. You gotta be transparent. Because if you don't let them know what's going on, they're going to make up what's going on. And that's how rumors.
And that's been true since the cavemen.
Yes.
Right? That's how the what do they call that? Where people are talking about what's going on and none of it's really true anyway, right?
Right.
I watched. Oh yeah, the what do you call it? What do you call that?
What's that?
I'll think of it in a minute. All the stuff. I heard that so and so said this and so and so. Huh? Right. But I watched just a couple of days ago the Crimson Tide. You watch the movie Crimson Tide?
Yep.
With Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington?
Yep.
One of my absolute favorite movies. I am absolutely in love. He is my idol, Gene Hackman, in that movie. I love his demeanor. I love the way he does things. I love the way he says things. I love the way he carries himself. I don't want to say that is me, but that's my idol. That's how I hope I perform some of the time in my many years in the fire service, And a couple of times he called Denzel Washington aside and said, "Come here, sit down." And he would talk to him about something. And one of the things he said was great. And this only applies to military, but it was great the way he said it. He said, We're here to defend democracy, not practice it." I thought that was such a powerful statement. Now it's a military statement because the fire department doesn't defend democracy, but he was so in tune with what his priorities were, and he was ready to press the button.
Yes,
he was ready to press the button and launch those missiles, and so was I. And every time I watch that movie, even though I know the end. And so was I. I was ready to press that button, and I'm a guy just like him. Here's what it says. It says an incomplete message is no message at all, and we go by the previous message. Previous message says, do this. That's what you're going to do if you work with me. So like I said, I'm sort of an old school boss. It has served me well. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not a nuclear submarine commander, but in the fire service, I think being a straight shooter and following the rules is always a good thing to do.
Yeah. You made me think of something. You mentioned since the day of cavemen. You know what else has been around since cavemen, in addition to the leadership lessons, is politics. People think that politics is limited to the volunteer fire service. How many times have you heard people quit their volunteer fire department or take to social media to talk about politics? Politics is everywhere you go in life. And I like to celebrate the life lessons that are learned in the volunteer firehouse. I think that's something that we can focus on when it comes to recruitment. Look at these life lessons. You're going to do inventory management, personnel management. You're going to learn how to work as a member of a board, possibly. Politics is everywhere, but the volunteer fire service can prepare you for wherever you go in life and make you better as a member of a committee, as a group. And those lessons are going to take with you for the rest of your life.
And volunteer fire departments even have more avenues of political activity, because in a paid fire department, you're on duty or you're on the job and you have a boss. You're in the A shift in Engine 1 and you got a lieutenant. And even in a volunteer fire department, you might be a member of truck company 2, and you might have a captain and a couple of lieutenants, but there's still an assistant chief, first assistant, second assistant, and the chief. Then there's a board of fire commissioners, and then there might be a couple of committees put together. Then there's the president, the vice president, secretary, and treasurer. Then there's the civil offices. There's all these little structures that are all inside the volunteer fire service compared to the career fire service, which don't have a lot of them,
Yeah.
And everybody got their place. So if you're a young volunteer firefighter, you have probably 2 or 3 company offices that are your company offices from the company you belong to. There are probably a couple of other company officers in the building or at the run that aren't your officer. They know you, you know them, but they're not really your officer. But they're still an officer, and they get the respect. And then there's the president of the company, which certainly during meetings and official functions gets the respect of everybody, president, vice president. Then there's the commissioners, which that's always a bit of a head-banging position. Sometimes the commissioners bang heads with the chiefs and with the members and stuff like that. And the reason that happens often is because most of the time, or at least a lot of the time, and I'd like to know what your opinion is on this, so many commissioners in the volunteer fire service are members of the volunteer fire service.
Oh, yeah. All 5 of ours, including me.
Right. So it sort of becomes, there are some conflicts that develop because of that. There are you got 5 commissioners, 3 of them are past chiefs. Now it's like the past chiefs are running the fire department, even though they did get elected, but the elections for the most part are what? Most of the time, commissioners' elections are nonsense. 18 people show up, 12 people, 11 people, all members, 5 members, 4 wives come with them. That's 9. And, and 1 neighbor that lives next to the guy comes and votes for him, So that's a bit of a farce. The commissioner, the commissioner structure at least in New York State. I'm not sure if in every state, if the commissioners are publicly elected like they are in New York State, but
you know what I always say though, you gotta stay in your lane. If you're a commissioner, you've got to stay in your lane. And at one time, 3 of our commissioners were past chiefs. Now 2 of us are, but we've always stayed in our lane. And by and large, we let the chiefs and the officers run that side of the show. We just support them with their requests. But when it comes to SOPs, SOGs, and things like that, now there's long-standing ways of doing things that sometimes when they change that, we'll be like, why'd they do that? But it's very rare that we interfere with the direction that they want to go in. I think that's where sometimes you get into the headbutting.
I'll tell you another thing that I've noticed, and it's more common in some departments than others, which is typical for every issue. Presidents, the civil officers in the volunteer fire service, and most of my experience has been in New York State, but I know a lot of volunteer fire service, a lot of volunteer fire departments around the country. A lot of states have the president, the vice president for the civil end of the department, and the president actually holds a lot more and yields a lot more power than most people realize. A lot of places defer to the chief, and it'll happen at my firehouse right here, right now. Currently, we'll be somewhere, and we'll be all at the firehouse on a Saturday for coin drop. We're doing a coin drop fundraiser that we decided on 2 company meetings ago. Somebody brought it up, blah blah blah. Somebody made a motion. The president said, "Okay, good. Let's pick a date," And now there we are at the coin drop, and the chief is there too because he's still a member, right? But he's sort of not pushing everybody around, but sort of running the show. And a couple of times I said, "Hey, what are you doing? What do you mean? What am I doing? Trying to get no. He's in charge right now. He's the president. We're at the coin drop. This is a civil function. This isn't a drill. This isn't a fire. You're not in charge of this. You're in charge of the company."
Goes both ways. He's got to stay in his lane too, right? He or she's got to stay in the lane too.
Yeah. The way it's structured, if everybody pays attention to what they're doing and it's been defined, usually it works very nicely.
Now, what's a coin drop?
Huh?
What's a coin drop?
Get out of here.
I have no idea.
No.
No.
It's a fundraiser. I just passed another one up in Pennsylvania on the way to my home in Pennsylvania. I just passed another one there. And you're driving down the road, and all of a sudden you see a sign on the side of the road. South Blooming Grove Fire Department, coin drop ahead. And as you get closer to the firehouse now, there's cones, red cones on the yellow line. and there's 5 guys standing on the yellow line with a boot or a helmet, and you stop and you drop money in, and then you drive away.
A boot drive, we call it, right?
It's fill the boot. It's fill the boot, but we call it a coin drop.
Yeah.
And we make $3,000-4,000 in one morning.
Wow.
Make a lot of money. You do it on a holiday weekend, Memorial Day weekend or something. You do it from 9 till 12, 9 till 1. Give the boys lunch afterwards, and everybody goes home.
Wow. Well, Chief, I can't thank you for taking some time to talk to me. I mean, this has been a nice casual conversation about the fire service. I really admire your level of commitment, your dedication still, to getting out of bed at 2 a.m, getting up and going every time that pager goes off, as long as you can. There's something to be said for that. It's admirable, and I commend you for that. It really is.
Right.
That's great. So I always enjoy picking your brain about the volunteer fire service. There's so many topics worthy of discussion. I know we talked about a few here today.
We did. We had a good broad discussion today.
Yeah, it's very relaxed too. And I haven't gotten any texts yet. I'm still waiting on a grandbaby coming any day now. So I'm keeping an eye on the phone. Nothing yet. So
that'll be fun.
Yeah. So I look forward to seeing you again down the road. I know you've been on the road a bit. I've been on the road a bit. So hopefully
you'll be at FDIC, right?
Yes, sir. Be back at FDIC in April.
Rick and I will be there the whole week again, so we'll look forward to seeing you. Maybe we'll do dinner again or lunch or something.
Absolutely. I'll be there for the whole week as well. Really looking forward to it. And any last words for the listeners about our fire service?
Make all your runs. That's all I got to tell guys. Make all your runs, man. It's not a club, right? It's a service organization. You gotta make the runs. That comes first.
Yeah. What about if people want to reach out to you? I know you're happy. You're always willing to give your email for people that have questions or want to reach out to you.
Yes, of course. Chief John Salka at gmail.com. Very easy. You can email me questions. You can, if you're interested in one of my books, I got 4 books. You can look them up online, and we can always work that out via email.
All right. Awesome. The books are right here behind me as well. Your book and mine as well. But thanks to the listeners for listening in. My next show will be November 18th. November 18th is my next show. That's like a week before Thanksgiving. I cannot believe we're entering that time of the year. But Chief, you'll like this. I got my load of firewood coming for my nice wood burning fireplace. I know you love when the snow falls. I love when the snow.
Oh, I love the snow. I was with my grandson yesterday. We had a TV show on and it was snowing. I said, "Oh, Grandpa loves the snow."
Yeah. And November 18th will be my next show. We'll keep this conversation going about our great volunteer fire service with another guest and talking about timely topics and things going on. So thank you. And always remember, folks, that true professionalism is never defined by a paycheck, and your residents are owed professional service that's delivered by professional firefighters who represent a professional organization. Take care, folks, and stay safe.
Prepare, respond, survive. When seconds count, train with the best. Fire facilities, custom steel towers built for real-world fire training. Be ready, be resilient.